change is expected in Washington. Spending cuts are likely in the wake of the debt debate, but how much and how soon? Rebel Cole, professor of finance at DePaul University, is here with a breakdown on the proposed spending cuts. We'll see if those actually happen. Always great to have you on the show, Rebel.
Good to be back.
And what do you think? Do you think the average American is even going to notice the spending cuts immediately?
Well, the CBO is scoring this at about $920 billion in cuts, and then there's another $1.2 trillion to be named later by a bipartisan panel. But in fact, only Washington is an increase a cut. So if we're growing it slower than the previous budget, they consider that a cut. So in fact, the budget's going to grow at about 4% per year, but it will grow more slowly than it was proposed under the previous budget.
Are there any federal agencies that are hit especially hard with this spending savings, as you like to call it?
In the early years, it's very minimal. Of the $900 billion, 2/3 is backloaded after the president would be out of office if he gets reelected. So it's very, very minimal in the first few years. So there's going to be very little that's felt up front. Unless this bipartisan panel fails to do its job, then the bill puts a straitjacket on the Congress and forces them to do rather draconian cuts to Medicare, not the recipients, but the providers, and to the defense budget.
And that group has until December 23rd to come up with a deal. Otherwise, those cuts will happen. Do you think it's likely it will happen? There will be cuts to Medicare and Social Security and other social programs.
It's difficult to say, but it's just another example of the Congress kicking the can down the road, avoiding their responsibility, what we elected them to do. Likely we'll see another, brinksmanship up to the last moment, and then we'll have a crisis mode, and then we'll have to vote on something before we read it, just like we did with the health care bill and the TARP, and now with this bill.
Something that lawmakers are not talking about right now are tax increases. Do you think that's likely to happen?
Certainly the president wants revenues to be on the table, but the Republicans are totally against that, and given the economic news, which continues to be worse and worse, I can't see that coming in the near future. Maybe down the road in another year or two when the economy picks up, but not in the immediate future.
Do you think change needs to happen to our tax laws?
Certainly the Simpson-Bowles Commission recommended major tax reform, lowering the rates and doing away with a lot of the deductions. We have a lot of people who should be paying taxes, but because they can afford a good tax attorney and a good accountant, they don't pay taxes.
Even Warren Buffett coming out and saying that based on the tax rate, he's actually paying less than his own secretary. And
we have GE, whose CEO was the head of the President's Jobs Commission, paying zero taxes when they're supposed to be paying 35%. And it's all about loopholes. So if we close the loopholes, we can lower the rates and actually increase the revenues.
By the way, we've been hearing a lot from the CBO, and they've been watching this debt debate every step of the way and giving us information on what the cuts and spending will actually look like. What do you think about the CBO?
I tell my students the CBO is how not to do finance. The first thing we teach in finance is about the time value of money, that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. The CBO does not discount, so they treat $1 saved 10 years out the same as $1 saved today. It's just ludicrous. They're in a straitjacket too. They have to score based upon the assumptions given to them by Congress, so they can't deviate. So what you hear out of the CBO is almost a preordained conclusion based upon what the Congress critters tell them to do.
Always interesting comments from you. Thank you so much, Rebel Cole, finance professor at DePaul University.
Pleasure to be here.